Isn't it so frustrating when you're going on a vacation, you get the car all packed up, everybody's ready to go, you start driving out of town and one of the kids say, I gotta go to the restroom. You gotta stop before you get out of town. Let's talk about it. We just started a new series called The Word Became Flesh, or in the New Living Translation, The Word Became Human. And it's all centered around this idea of the importance, the meaning of Christmas. And there's one character in the passage that's just kind of stuck in there that we're not going to have time to talk about much on Sunday morning. So I kind of wanted to take this time to talk about him. And this character is known as John the Baptist. And so John chapter 1 verse 5, it goes like this: the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And it would seem natural to flow right into verse 9. Verse 9 says, the true light that gives light to everyone has come into the world. So it just, one verse flows into the next one. But then there's a couple verses that are just stuck in between those two verses about this guy named John the Baptist. So it doesn't just flow from one to the other, it sticks John in the middle of it. The same thing happens with verses 14, 15, and 16. 14 seems to flow right into 16, but then there's this jarring addition of a character in the middle of the two verses that seem to flow into from one to the other. And we need to add some clarification about who we're talking about, because in this passage we've got a guy named John writing about a guy named John. So we add the Baptist to one of the guys that we're talking about named John. And the Baptist word is not something we pull out of Scripture, actually. That's something that we kind of added it throughout tradition much later. If we were actually going to use the language of Scripture to give John a nickname, we'd call him John the Messenger, because John chapter 1 actually talks about John the Baptist as a messenger about Jesus. And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Or maybe John the Witness about Jesus. So it goes like this: there was a man sent. These are the jarring verses that are stuck in between the other verses. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light. And I think John, the writer of this passage, when he was writing this, he kind of meant for this to feel a little out of place, because if you look at the history of things, John the Baptist kind of was a jarring character. I don't think that this was poor writing on John's part. This was a literary device to show kind of the feeling that John brought to the world when he was preaching about Jesus. So John the Baptist's job was to be a witness about Christ, to represent Jesus. It wasn't about John. John's calling was to point to Jesus. And Jesus was a very jarring character himself. He kind of interrupted the whole flow of history and the Israelites' whole plan for what was going to happen in this world. Jesus kind of was stuck in the middle of their plans. And we religious leaders, ever since John the Baptist, have been really good at representing ourselves well, but sometimes I question how good we do at representing Jesus Christ. And so it goes on. So that through him, talking about John the Baptist, all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. So there's nothing magical about John. In fact, the most important thing about John, the thing that sets him apart from everybody else, is that he knew who Jesus was, and he pointed Jesus out to the rest of the world. He knew the good news. That's what was great about John. God could have just shown his power to the world, but he chose to use a man. He chose to speak through a human. He could have sent down lightning or some miraculous thing or spoken from heaven and just revealed himself to the world, but he chose to do it through a man. And what was that message? Now we're back to verse 9. This is the message. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. Just like God chose to use John the Baptist to bring this message, God chose to use you to bring the good news to the world. So stop here, answer questions 1 through 3, and then push play again. When we talk about Christmas, it's important to not just remember what happened 2,000 years ago, to remember that God did something great back then. We also have to remember that God is doing something great today. God is doing something great specifically even in your life. So what is he doing? He's sending you. He's inspiring you to bring the good news. He's training you to be the witness so that people will be drawn to the light because of you. So that people will be drawn to this new life that is available in Jesus Christ. The gospel doesn't just come through the air or crazy inspiration. Those things kind of happen sometimes, but God uses human beings. He uses your words. He uses the texts and emails that you're sending to people, your tweets and your Facebook posts. He's using the way you're living your life to bring his good news to the world. Verse 8 says, he himself, talking about John the Baptist, maybe I should call him JB for short, he himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. We are not the light. We are witnesses to the light. We don't set an example about how to live your life because we want people to be like us. We set an example about how you should live this life, the good life, because we want people to be like Christ and be drawn to him. I've been so frustrated lately when I'm recording this video. News keeps coming out of politicians and news people and people in Hollywood making terrible decisions about the way they're living their lives and doing things to other people that are just totally despicable. And I'm just so frustrated as I watch these things unfold, just wondering, when are people going to realize that the people that keep getting caught in these acts live their lives this way, and the people that don't live their lives in those way are not getting caught doing these things? I remember back when Mike Pence was running for office. I'm not making a political statement here, but everybody was criticizing him for putting up specific boundaries about when he'll meet with women and setting up boundaries to keep himself from doing certain things. And everybody criticized him for it. But then down the road, people get caught into the sin that he was creating the boundaries to make sure he didn't do. And now those people are criticized. And I just wonder, when is the world going to recognize that the way we live our lives directly reflects on us, and then because it reflects on us, it reflects on God. So we need to live our lives in such a way that we reflect God. We show people who Jesus is. Sin seems so appealing until we get found out, until it catches up with us. But we keep giving power to people in our society who have not made the decision to live life like Christ taught us to live in order to show people who he is. So there's a couple more questions that you can answer, and then we'll see you Sunday in church.